hello out there in video world.
I'm the voice that doesn't show up on film.
And it's all pronounced stolen.
Well, it's not streaming, it's just recorded.
I've got a thing for that.
Yes, I do.
Am I getting scale for this?
Okay, sir, you had a question.
I was gonna say, what percentage? I mean, I'm not a skeptic, but I'm like open-minded. So like when I watch a show like Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures or what is it? I mean, how often do you think that is just sort of made for TV to make it look real or to play it up? And how much of that do you think is real or is they actually believe it's real?
Before you start with that, I just want to add, before he starts on the answer with it, for the past 2 years, that question usually doesn't come in until 3rd or 5th, so thank you. You don't practice it this one.
Okay, as a rule, I don't like to comment on individual groups, including ones who do TV shows. I will say this, there are 2 examples of TV shows I can comment positively on, so I will do so. Ghost Hunters, I have not ever interacted with them personally, but Lou, the guy who trained me, knew them well. He always had nice things to say about them. On the whole, they do seem to know what they're doing. The other one is a show called Haunted Collector that used to run on Sci-Fi. I have issues with how Haunted Collector was carried out, and I'll leave it at that. But John Zaffis, the gentleman who was the main investigator behind the show, knows his shit. I will not fault John. I've worked with John personally in the field more than once. He's an excellent investigator. He's a good guy. I would recommend, if you ever get a chance, going to check out one of his lectures. He has a lot of interesting things to say. Other shows, the reality of it is, when I go out to a house, when any investigator goes out to a house, we come up with butt kiss from time to time. One of my favorite examples, a friend of mine who's also an investigator who works in Texas gets called to this house. The house, murder takes place there. Ever since the murder, they haven't been able to rent it to everybody. People run out screaming within a day or 2. So, wanting desperately to sell the house, so to rent the house out, they asked my friend to investigate. Now, it's in San Antonio, Texas, which isn't one of the safest cities in the country, and it's not the safest part of the city. And a cardinal rule of ghost hunting is never go by yourself. The reasons for which are very logical and all come down to, yeah, if you're by yourself and you hurt yourself, you got a problem. Long story, slightly shorter, she brings in a former Navy SEAL paramedic with her. They walk into the house. They hear unusual noises. Her reaction, come in, go find out what's going on. His reaction is to turn around and run out screaming. She ultimately found the house isn't haunted. There's raccoons living under it. Raccoons are freaking animals. That's all that's going on. So there's a lot of false alarm calls. We get calls that are people that are crazy. We get calls from people that have seen a horror movie one too many times and have an overactive imagination. We get calls from entirely mundane things like raccoons that people think are ghosts. For a TV show, they don't really want to show those things, so I think, honestly, sometimes all of them probably fake things. Because that's how they're going to stay on the air.
Or it just ends up on the cutting room floor.
But yeah, from a production standpoint, and I don't know some of the people associated with the show, I don't want to speak ill of anybody on these shows. The fact is that these shows are, at core, reality shows, which means that the writers aren't getting paid as writers, but nonetheless, what they're trying to do is create compelling drama for viewership. There may be pearls of accuracy, and there very likely are several pearls of accuracy, but like any other reality-based show, which also can include sports programming, they're giving you the slices that will entertain and titillate more than actually educate you into the core reality of what's going on. Am I about accurate there?
I agree completely.
I mean, let's be honest. Who really wants to watch a show and invest an hour of their life when at least half of the shows they're putting on air have nothing in them?
I'm a poker player, and let me tell you how poker actually is played, which is just sitting there at the table for about an hour doing nothing, and that's not what they show you on television. It's not all in every hand.
That's another situation you'll see with books. Amityville Horror, and I can go on at length about it. I have some direct information that a lot of people don't. But the book there's inconsistencies between the book and what the family actually says. If you look at a lot of the inconsistencies, the book says they floated 6 feet over the bed. The family says it was more like 6 inches. But why is it? It's supposed to be a nonfiction book. The reality is, much like in production, publishers are trying to make money, not necessarily tell the true story. There's a give and take between trying to put out a product somebody wants to watch or wants to buy in the case of a book, and wanting to tell an accurate story. And sometimes the truth gets lost between.
In some nonfiction books, you can actually find a second edition with errata. Just because they managed to make a mistake in the first issue may not necessarily have meant they knew they were making a mistake. And that's unfortunate.
For example, even the Smithsonian, where you think, all right, well, these guys know what they're talking about. Occasionally, they wind up whitewashing things to a point where it's more entertaining than truthful. So we'll read entirely different than if you were reading, say, an article published on a historical journal. So you wind up without them citing sources, and even that winds up becoming not that trustworthy, just out of entertainment value.
Not that, there's something.
Amazingly, and it's interesting, a lot of people get used to the idea of this has been over-sensationalized for either the television or the book. But you also have to understand, this is a flipped coin. There are pieces of literature that are not merely over-sensationalized. Some of them are under-sensationalized because they don't want some of that information out there for people to grab onto. That's sort of the Mythbusters, please don't try this at home kind of edict, which is that general idea that, they're kind of afraid to say, well, I saw this piece of magical work, and don't do that, please don't do that. So there is, in nonfiction books, there is always too much and not enough.
You had a question, sir.
Oh yeah, it's kind of curious, the two gentlemen on either end. I got the Omnimancer, I forgot your name.
Howard.
Howard, and you like, there seems to be a difference in your philosophy. I'm just curious.
Yes, very much. He's laughing over there.
I mean,
We're laughing because Art
Do I need to back up a little more?
and I have known each other for, 20 some odd years. We actually started,
95, I think. So
maybe we started at a pre-conference to one he's developed. And I would say that Art and I come from incredibly different paths, but we've also had great respect for each other's path. We've been very good friends. This is actually the first year I had to pull out of this conference in advance. I feel badly about that. But yeah, I mean, yours is very technically based. Well, I'm not going to speak on yours.
I've been reading a lot about occultism, not practice, but just reading a lot. So I'm just curious about different nuances in philosophy.
Well, every different magical system, including to a certain degree of a religion, comes out of the culture that it's born in. The fact of the matter is that we don't live in the 1800s, we don't live in the 2000s. Everybody's walking around in here with a supercomputer in their pocket. And so think of Battlestar Galactica from like 1978 versus the newer one that came out. You couldn't get away with what back then. People were a lot more, they want to see the details, they want to see all that kind of thing. So I approach magic as a scientific concept. I expect to do experiments, I expect to actually get results out of it, I do. And because what I do is very, very detail oriented, not everybody who gets into my style of magic can handle all of the minutia, if you will. Whereas a different, more traditional forms of magic, as I guess you would put it, because I guess I'm more on the fringe, it's more abstracted. It's more symbols represent larger complex things, where I'm more concerned about the complicated pieces of it. Mostly because I've found that if you understand how it actually works, you can dissect it and improve those parts and then make it better each time. And more importantly, you can teach the next person that comes in the door exactly on the same level, rather than everybody trying to make clones of the founder. That the individuality of the people actually adds to the strength of the group rather than tearing it down. And I'm not saying that
No,
actually anything else on your end, but I mean...
The interesting thing is that while both of our traditions are very, very different, one of the things that keeps getting Art and I to talk is the fact that once you get through all of the learning steps, Art and I often talk about how similar our paths are, but the
We
way
survive
to
them
get to those realizations, we're talking about it comes down to philosophy. People ask me, well, what's your religious basis? And I said, well, it's Andreism, it's mine and you can't have it. Because religion is how you deal with what is supernatural, what is, best term, divine to you. It's your conversation with that. This is my philosophy talking, I don't speak for anybody else. Philosophically, that becomes the grounds of how you practice things, your common core vocabulary. Whereas in some places is psychic circuitry an acceptable? No, I never.
It's as good as you're going to
Yeah,
get.
it's the idea of seeing
Well, it's
things from a
theurgy
technical.
versus thaumaturgy.
Yeah, and from my point, it's basically symbolic correlation. It's the mine could be called synesthetic magic. Because it's like, well, blue means 3, that kind of stuff.
Whereas we actually train our students actually to be able to see the magic, and then at that point they can disassemble it, much like you might do to a car. You can go to your car and switch out the engine, switch out the alternator, put it in something better, it shouldn't be there, and soup it up, that kind of thing. And that's how we approach the magic in Omnimancer. And so it's a very, very different perspective. We don't involve spirits. We come across them, of course, but that isn't how our magic's based. Whereas you're on a theurgy basis, you have to involve spirits by definition.
I'm sorry, are you okay on the end, or is he leaking?
What?
I know, I looked over and you're like,
And no, that was me doing sanitizer, which I just put on the table. He said
so it is Art's fault. You can obviously, I don't want to get too far off from Kevin's. You can obviously pull any of us aside and say, well, what actually is your path?
Yeah.
But my one last caveat that a friend told me is that he says, dogma is the excretia of somebody who has found enlightenment. So you can either go on a search for your own enlightenment, or you can eat someone else's shit. So
I like that.
So I've always loved. It's disgusting, but I love it. Talk to somebody about how to find it, but do it on your own. Find your own answers, because your answers inevitably aren't going to be the same as our answers. And we were all 20 years inexperienced at one point, and some of the stuff we screwed up on our own.
Oh yeah.
That's the thing you're running
all do
into.
that.
Yeah, you're gonna make mistakes. It's inevitable. One of the things I think there's value in something like this where we have similarities, but a quite bit of difference in the 4 of us and our perspectives. I, for example, am the only, I think, devout Christian here at the moment.
Yes. Sorry, outside voice.
I don't know with you exactly. I know for certain with them. But the bottom line is, I may not
Jewish,
practice, I may not do what they do per se. I may approach things differently, but that doesn't necessarily mean I look down on what they do. It doesn't mean that we don't have common ground. I like one of my favorite authors uses for his description of God, but I think it applies to this in general. There's this parable of the 3 blind men and the elephant, where 3 blind men come across an elephant, and each interprets the elephant in his own way. Well, we are 4 blind men. The paranormal, perhaps, is our elephant.
I like that. I'm going to steal that.
What are these?
That's great.
Note to self, pull out notebook, start writing quotes.
That's really the idea, at least for me, of putting this panel together, is the paranormal is such a vast and complex subject. I don't know anything like a quarter of it, let alone all of it.
Right, so at this point I'm going to plug this. In November, there's a conference dedicated to this. It's called Crucible.
It's actually in October.
What?
October 3rd.
What?
October 3rd.
October, right? That's why that was a compliment.
Because you said November.
Talk to Art. It's a wonderful conference.
I would agree. It is a great. I've been in. It is a wonderful conference. I highly recommend it.
I would recommend it. It's my conference.
Please, because the more you've attended, the less he winds up in the red. But it is dedicated to a lot of these topics.
The idea of Crucible is to take as many divergent points of view and all throw it into one conference. The whole idea is that people are very used to their own comfort zone. And they might come to their speaker because that's who they want to see, but they stay to see everybody else's stuff. And education comes from being exposed to stuff you're not used to. Whether you agree with it or not, at least you know a little bit more than what you're talking about than simply talking about somebody else's interpretation. At least you have an opportunity now, you know, if you're Wiccan or if you're Christian or something else like that, you now have a chance to talk with these people and then come away with, okay, is it what I thought? Is it different? But at least now you're more educated about it rather than making assumptions because that's what the public masses think.
And one of the Crucible family is talking at 9:30 today.
No?
Yeah, Jason Miller is doing the sex magic.
Yes.
He's one of the regular lecturers, and Jason's good shit.
Yes.
And it's sex magic, which is also.
It's sex magic.
I can answer questions on that later. Oh, really? Actually,
Questions?
please.
I think somebody over there had a question.
Oh, I did.
Yes.
No, I wanted to ask you, of all of your investigations, tell us about the one that was like the most compelling for you.
That's a good. The most.
Tell us about, like, yeah, what of all the investigations you've ever done, which was like the best or the one that was the most compelling? That got you like the most excited?
I know the story, and I think everyone will. There's aspects of this I think other people at the panel can chime in on because it's a very interesting case. So, years ago when Lou was still alive, I got called into a case in South Jersey. I'm not going to use the woman's real name for the sake of her privacy. We'll call her Susan. Susan was having a lot of weird things happen in her house. She'd hear voices talking to her saying, "Susan, come with us." She would see black shadows running up and down the hall. I don't mean black shadow cast against the wall. I mean a black shadow standing in the hallway running up and down the hall. She'd go in to see her infant son and find them circling the bed. So understandably, she's really freaked out about this. So we go down there, we're doing EVP. If you don't know what EVP is, it's electronic voice phenomenon. It's attempting to make an audio recording of spirit. If you come to the 7:30, I will be going over how to do that. Shameless plug for the next thing. Unfortunately, we won't be doing it because I wasn't able to bring the recorder, but we'll at least give you an idea of how to do it in the future. But anyway, this house, every person who ever brought a recorder into this house, and I mean investigators, I mean members of clergy, heck, we have reporters come in and do it. If you look up, there's a book called Will Storr versus Supernatural, where he talks about being in that particular house, so I think he may use a different assumed name for the woman. And the thing is, we always got answers. They use the same things they said to her. We get, Susan, come with us. We would get answers to questions. Now, this is one of the reasons this is one of my favorite cases, because you have a voice that will this regularly answer questions you ask. There's things you want to know, right? So we asked him a couple other questions. I asked him, how is Elvis and have you seen him lately? Yes, I'm a Ghostbusters fan. I asked, we didn't get an answer to that one, unfortunately. Lou, my mentor, asks, do you have cable television in hell? We got an answer.
All ESPN.
Not quite. It ultimately said, we also asked what the highest internet connection down there was. We got an answer, we've never deciphered what it said.
110 baud.
I think you're right.
That sucks.
So, at any rate, we're doing these EVPs, recording them, we're documenting them so that we can ultimately go to a priest, get a priest involved to perform an exorcism. It's the end of the night. It's about a 2-hour drive home for both of us in different directions. And we're just sitting and chatting with the woman. I forget what we were even talking about. It had nothing to do with the paranormal. It was sports or weather or some completely irrelevant thing. She'd actually wound up making breakfast for us because it was about 5 in the morning at this point. And she's sitting like this. She looks up, and her face and especially her eyes change. She says, "Looking at Lou and I, you don't know as much as you think you do." And he goes like this and just goes back to talking as if nothing had ever happened. That is among the few times in my life I've ever actually seen someone possessed by a demon. It's a really freaky experience, to say the least. Now, where this really gets interesting to me happened later, and unfortunately, if the exorcist that was supposed to be here was, he could tell you firsthand. So I will, if you come to Steampunk World's Fair, he will be there. You can ask him to hear it firsthand. He's there with Lou another night. I'm not present, so I'm dealing with this secondhand. He has what Christians call a word of knowledge. Other people have other names for it, but basically, it's, shall we say, an intuition that something's going on. I should actually preface this by saying Lou is about 250 pounds. Father is about 150 soaking wet. Together, they're sitting on a couch. The couch levitates off the ground. He puts the Bible down on the couch. He does a prayer. The couch settles back down. She starts speaking to him in Serbo-Croatian. She doesn't speak Serbo-Croatian. He does. She winds up trying to put her cigarette out in a container of exercise salt, which is, there's holy salt and then there's exercise salt. It's another step down the line. It's a further step down the line designed for use during exorcism. They go outside to discuss what the heck's going on, which is the point that Father has a word of knowledge that more is going on. They go back inside. They start grilling her. They ask her, what is she not telling them? She goes up to her bedroom. This woman had been playing with Ouija boards. She had been doing pendulum. She had been doing tarot cards. She had been doing astrology. She had been going out to the cemetery at night to take photographs of spirits. Every occult thing you can imagine under the sun, she was into it. And she had no idea what she was doing. Well, this woman one night went out to a cemetery. She dug up a grave.
Oh my God.
She took an infant skull away from the grave, put it in a nice little cardboard box, and took it home to her so the spirits could talk to her through the skull. At this point, the Father says to her, "That's going to a mortician so it can be properly reinterred. If you don't do that, I'm calling CPS." He then did a blessing over the child to make sure that the spirits that were there could not harm the infant child. Did a blessing for the husband because the husband didn't want anything to do with this. And they went, "Goodbye." The fact is, and this is the thing you run into in my line of work, some people don't contact me because they want help. Some people do it because they want to confirm that they have something in their house. They think it's really cool they have something in their house, so why would they want to get rid of it? Some people, one of my favorite groups to encounter is there's a certain subclass of Satanists and Black magicians who will perform the various ceremonies that they do to get demons to do what they want. Occasionally they make a mistake and do the ritual wrong. This pisses the spirit off. This can wreak havoc in the person's life. They will call us to come make the spirit behave again so they can go back to doing the things that they do. Which is another one of those situations where it's like, no! I'm sorry, I'm not in the business of teaching you how to summon demons better.
Here's your 5-year coin. Stop doing stupid occultism. Just a note for those of you who have ever been curious about Satanism, not that I'm a practitioner of Satanism, there are two sides that you will find once you... Yeah, I know, but I play one too. There are two sides you'll come across. The one that's most popular is the LeBase Satanism, this little satanic Bible, which is actually, and hopefully you'll agree with me, it's not Satanism, it's anti-Christianity. It really is there to ruffle the feathers of somebody Christian to go, oh, this is horrible, this is horrible. The only reason I say this is being raised Jewish, I looked and it was like, yeah? So then there's the other sect of Satanism, which is glorifying Satan as the fallen angel. They're the ones who are actually putting together treatises and coloring books for schools that are passing out Bibles. They're more interesting to read about right now because they're basically saying, you want to have religion in the schools? Let me have my child do a moment of prayer by casting a pentacle. And I'm really happy with what they're doing. Again, not correct.
Now, I will say this, as much as when I sometimes talk to Kevin and talk to the father and that kind of thing, sometimes it gets to a certain point that they have and they don't mean to have a negative view of things, but it comes off in how they speak about it. And I'm not trying to do it that kind of way, but it's a matter of, think of a police officer who is constantly seeing domestic disputes and stuff like that. They end up feeling that, if you're not a police officer, you're just a domestic dispute waiting to happen. Judges get kind of jaded that way too. By the time Kevin and the father get called in, the magician's already blown himself up. They've already created havoc on the ground drawing or something stupid. But you go to a magic convention, and 99% of the people there are competent, aren't stupid freaking idiots. But you think about how many people even at this convention are freaking idiots. There's always going to be a percentage of people who are going to do something stupid. So I am not saying that magic is inherently safe, but neither is a car. You get proper training, it's a perfectly usable item. If you don't get proper training and you don't know what you're doing, that's just a slightly chance of hurting yourself. So that's the thing I do.
I agree with
I'm sorry.
Let me just respond, if I may. But I agree with what Arthur's saying. I am not personally saying that all magic is evil. I'm not even saying that all people that necessarily deal with morally grave magic are necessarily bad people. As he said, usually by the time I get called, the shit's hit the fan.
Yeah. I'm not fixed there.
On the other hand, I consider my fellow panelists my friends, and I try not to criticize.
No, you don't. But I mean, it's a matter of.
I know it happens.
I hear sometimes when people hear things, and because they don't know the other side of it.
Yeah.
If it isn't counter shown.
No, I think it's absolutely valid, which is why I wanted everyone else to comment.
If I can
To add that in.
Sorry.
So,
how about we let into the cases he has? I didn't yet know.
So, on that same exact note, if you look back into the Middle Ages, which is one of the heights of ritual magic, as far as summoning demons and spirits goes, the people who practiced it did not consider themselves evil. In fact, most were members of the clergy. They would go through a purification period before they tried to summon anything, so that way they'd be defended against it. They would fast for a couple of days, so that way, when they summon a demon, they're not vulnerable to the demon because they can combat said demon with faith. That was their view on spirits. You have to be able to defend yourself in order to do so, in order to command them to do good. What they wanted to do was take something that's terribly evil and twist it so that way it's now doing good for humanity. So even when you think of the darkest thing you could imagine someone doing, which was summoning demons, they were trying to do it for good. When I say they, I mean what they were claiming to do, and they also view that this was one of those things you don't want to spread around because people are stupid and people are weak. So
Pope that published a book on how to summon demons.
Mostly for the sake of trying to fight them, but
yes. But he did actually summon them up. But Andrei?
I was going to say, and this comes out of this comes out of art and a few other people. I really like coming back to that. We'll come up to you in one moment.
Don't worry.
We see you there. Any kind of work you do comes from the use of tools, whether those tools be hammers, or screwdrivers, or occultism, demonology, invocation, sex magic. They're tools. And the example I often use when we talk about these things is a chainsaw. A chainsaw used on a large block of ice can create absolute beauty. The chainsaw in the 8th film in the whole series gets boring. I'm tired of seeing that kind of slashing. They're tools. Now, I've worked in Goetia, which is the 72 demons. And the whole question of well, are they going to fool you? Are they not going to fool you? Is it safe? Is it not safe? You can decide whether or not the demon is something that you're bringing in personally, or whether or not it's something in your own head already and you're letting it out to play with. And yes, you can do smart things and you can do stupid things. And he's dealt many times with people who went off half-cocked. And you just stupid, and calling somebody in to go, help, I've made a mess, only works the first time. Somebody wisely once said to me, if you are there for somebody who is direly in need, they will know they can always call on you when they are still direly in need. So you have to make sure that you educate more than just say.
It's also, from my perspective, when I'm dealing with someone who didn't know what they were doing, who made a mistake with magic and wound up with a demon, okay, that's one thing. When I am dealing with someone who's actively summoning up demons to hurt other people, I'm not here to help to make other people's lives miserable. I'm going to say clean up your own mess. If you want to fix the mistakes you made, I'll help you. I'll happily help you. If you want to keep making mistakes, you're calling the wrong guy.
Sorry, I'm listening to Andrea talk about setting someone's house on fire psychically, and just you get all types. You were at that panel, weren't you?
Wasn't the one guy very proudly set his own house on fire?
Yes.
And that was not Andrea, that was the other guy.
That was.
I don't know if I should mention his name.
I'm the crucible.
I gotta wish I had been here to see this particular fail.
Well, he cast to get more money, and so the net result was he summoned something to do it. He was very proud of this fact. And it came down, and all of a sudden his house caught on fire. But because of the insurance money and stuff like that, the net result was he was able to get a new house and everything else like that, and $16,000 on top of that. But still, you still burned down your house.
It sounds like a genie wish.
Remember,
certainly.
for those of you who are geeks, remember that occultism sometimes is like a D&D wish spell.
Yeah.
Very clear. This gentleman has been waiting for quite some time.
Go for it.
Well, it seems like the reason that he would think magic makes you evil is he goes, well, no one ever talks about the thing where everything goes fine. Everyone loves the stories where, the house burns down, the person goes nuts, somebody stabs someone. Like, my sister, on some night with her friends, played with an Ouija board twice, and nothing happened years later. And it's boring, so no one talks about that.
I
have lots of success.
I was going to say, I'll be happy to tell you about summoning the goetic demon Andromalius several times. And
well, I would love
it
to
keeps getting better every time I do it. I'm not kidding.
I was in the bathroom. I didn't even hear something went good.
Well, if I might chime in for a second, and yeah, you get that where nothing happened, and you also get things that happen that aren't good, and it's much more interesting for me to say what happened one Halloween when we were doing the Ouija board with the 4 different ghosts we had. Me and my sister had somebody from the the McDonald clan, who, if anybody knows anything about the last name Campbell and the song Here Comes the Campbells, you understand why it was perfectly reasonable why he pretended to be our recently dead uncle. That's a kind of an easy thing on that.
To answer your question very simply and directly, and a lot of you may not have got. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
Yeah, because there was the first one. Second one was far more mundane. It was somebody's grandmother telling him that he's going to inherit his grandfather's crossbow and he should check for diabetes in the foot. Third one was much more weird. It was a 13-year-old child of a ghost girl who wanted the other friend intimately and was following him around. Didn't want to do anything about that, so we did nothing on that. And then the fourth one is the one that everybody's going to talk about, which was saying something that to the rest of us were gibberish, but to our Filipino friend caused her to go, and that's the reaction that people want to talk about.
Just really, to sum up your question that I find is very real world, you notice the red lights faster than you notice the green lights.
Yeah.
I mean, you drive somewhere and you hit all green lights, you got home. You drive somewhere and you hit all the red lights, every bloody red light you remember.
Oh, yes.
So actually, if you all want to take a magical experiment to go home with, except for the snow, which I'll introduce you to the band that caused that. When you're driving somewhere in town, notice the green lights. Think about the green lights. Don't let them just go by, because that is a step into actually understanding magical things happening. Then you get into the practice of the light is red, I'm going to make it green. That's another step. I can answer questions about that too.
I do want to just chime in. The other thing to realize is, I'm a demonologist. If you look me up online, that is my title. People don't call me when they've got Casper the Friendly Ghost who comes by and has coffee with them every morning. Or I'll put it another way. My mentor, the late Lieutenant Tilly, explained it differently. Perfectly, I can say. We're not the people you call when you hear footsteps outside in the hallway at night. We're the people you call when you're in a hotel room because you don't want to go home. So most of the time, if somebody's doing magic and everything's working out great, there aren't any problems, they're not going to call. Why are they going to call me?
To brag.
Yeah.
I still have a demon. Nothing go on.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Now, I don't get called in evil cases. Angels don't usually bother people.
Whatever happened to Casper, the not so happy dead boy corpse?
He's in the basement.
Friendly ghost. That means there has to be a Casper boy corpse somewhere.
Yes. Going back to the spirit board, I mean, me personally and a lot of my other pagan friends, we tend to stay away from them. I know it is very, there are ways to protect yourself while you're using them, but what is your feeling on using them in general?
Let me let everyone else.
I was going to say, I probably know your reaction, but...
Okay, so consider, now, again, this is going to be all you, I practice Thelema, which equals out to the special code of YMMV, which means your mileage may vary.
Of course.
Ouija, however you want to pronounce it, is the fine art of people pushing the thing around and saying, you did it, no, you did it.
Yes.
Somebody did it. But what's initially happening is you're waiting to see if this thing will move, whether by your power or someone else's. What's happening? If it is one of you moving it, but you don't think you're moving it, then what you're doing is letting it inside you.
Right.
That's invocation.
Of course.
Most people don't think about the fact that it's invocation. Is there something you can do? There are books about things you can do. You can banish. You can consecrate. I mean, you said you're
Anything,
you're
yeah,
pagan.
like what you would almost do just before a
Absolutely. It's
spell or
ritual.
invocation of
The
goddess
thing
or
is that
anything.
people see it as a toy, not a tool.
Tool,
I'm
exactly.
going to use it, and the fact that they sell it in toy stores.
Let's not get us started.
Yeah.
Especially the pink glow in the dark version.
Oh, good Lord.
Well, they have to do the English version now. But again, if you're going to do something that even slightly has that feeling, for lack of a better term, of ooh, think about what you're doing first.
Yeah.
Think.
But I mean more as a communication tool. Like you said,
Yes.
the tool.
Well, any tool can be
Right.
great if you want to use it, but be aware of what you're doing.
you
You're
can-
doing an invocation, and if
Exactly.
you haven't done work like that before, don't be surprised if somebody comes by going, "This is a nice house," and go move in.
It's not
At which point
like I
then you
said,
call
I
them.
personally choose not to use them because when I was young and stupid, my grandmother and I did one and we were like, oh, no thank you, not anymore.
I don't touch them either. I'll invoke
Yeah.
stuff.
Thing about a Ouija
No.
board. 99% of the time, as Andrei said, if you're playing with a Ouija board, you or someone else is pushing it.
Exactly.
It's a phenomenon technically known as automatism, which is when your muscles are moving without your conscious control or awareness. Of the remaining 1% of the time, it may not be something from my end of the field.
Right.
My main issue with Ouija boards is, unless you're a gifted psychic, you don't know what's on the other end of that
Exactly.
board. You're communicating with something, be it someone's subconscious or a spirit. That spirit may be an angel, it may be a demon, it may be a ghost, it may be a fairy, or who knows what else. You have no way of knowing. A very good friend of mine who is in fact a pagan as well, Holly Bear, I think puts it very well that by the time you know enough about what you're doing to be able to control what you're going to get and to be able to know what you're going to get and to properly protect yourself, you have other better tools at your disposal than a Ouija board.
Let me,
Exactly.
one last thing concerning the Ouija board, and this is a magical term some of you may be familiar with, jump in if you want, and that's the term of egregore. And what an egregore is when something takes on a life of its own. Memes are sort of like that. Corporations being entities. They're not entities, but we view them as such and they become as such. An egregore is powered by the number of people who have put that credibility into it. For example, we just passed through February 14th. Did anybody buy roses? Show of hands. Anybody buy roses for February 14th? I love you all. Because what is a rose? It's a pretty smelling flower with thorns on it. But society has conditioned us. The Ouija board. That is a massive egregore that carries, let's just say that you want to date somebody with that much baggage.
Yeah,
I mean, the Ouija board by itself goes, come play with me.
exactly.
So, you know, it's a tool. If you find something and go, there's a book on Satanism, this couldn't possibly hurt me. And I think, well, sorry, anybody else before I point at somebody who's...
I was just going to get details of what's going on with the Ouija board, but
Whereas the thing I had to offer is just other examples of evocations where there's been hundreds of years of debate on whether it's a demon or a spirit.
Right.
Which of Endor is the prime example?
What's the difference?
That's a good question. Why don't we each answer what the difference is?
Between a demon and a spirit?
Why don't you go first? I will go last. I like to pick on you. You're the new guy.
You don't pick on me, but then again, I'm also the one who comes up with the smart-ass answers, and then you have to...
I like that too.
Demon or spirit, what's the difference? Semantics. Semantics. One man's demon is another man's spirit. It's that simple. I mean, as I said, I do work with the goetic demon Andromalius, because what he does is if something has been lost or stolen from you, he goes out and makes sure it finds its way back to you, and if it was taken with malice, he eats the person.
Oh wow, hardcore.
Yeah, don't jump into Goetia first. Start with a Ouija board.
You told me to burn it.
You've got a good
So yeah, I'm not the person to ask what the difference is, because it's my philosophy is each person has to find their own.
Historian perspective.
My first question would be, according to whom? I mean, if we're looking at Christianity's view, you actually shift through several different definitions over the years, and this is before the modern era. But generally what they viewed as was demons were a non-human entity from hell. Basically something that serves Satan that's non-human. Or at least at the point where it is no longer human if it once was, as that's also frequently debated, pain in the ass. Whereas spirits generally viewed as like ghosts are usually believed as to be thought as human, and then back in the Middle Ages they debated about other spirits that were never human but were not demons. If you want a really good example of that one that managed to survive through the modern era, the German belief in the Elf King. It's non-human, non-demon. Completely separate from good and evil. It's just the Elf King. What do you want?
He's the king of elves.
Exactly, which frequently thought of to be a personification of the Germanic and Norse god Frey, or Freyr.
Are there?
Well, I have met good demons, I've met really bastard angels. So it's really his perspective. And they're really, I've always had a big issue about soul links, which is where you end up talking about like whether something's a pixie or a demon or an angel or a dragon or whatever flavor you come up with. Because everything can shape change anyway, so what difference does it make? So it's a matter of how do they act? Are they dickheads or are they helpful?
Right.
Are they helpful just so they can be dickheads later on? You know? So there are certain things out there that are generally want to be helpful, that's really where they want to be, and you can consider them good spirits. I don't really try to categorize it as demon or not, because, you know, just like people are people, spirits are spirits. They are who they are.
And your ex-significant other is a lover and a pain in the ass.
First of all, let me comment that there are about 5 minutes left in this panel. There is nothing else in this room until my next thing in half an hour. Yes, but there's more to it as well. We're also doing how to hunt ghosts. Please feel, we were supposed to be doing a seance in here. The seance isn't going to happen because people we need can't come because of the weather. We're doing Ghost Hunting 101.
Okay, the bottom. Yeah, I barely made it here myself. So
So let me answer the question, and then we'll have time for a few more questions. People tend to look at me, and fairly so, and tend to think I tend to look at everything as demons, and there's some truth to that. My view is actually fairly pragmatic. There's the theological question of what is a demon and what is a spirit, and I'll get back to that in a second. My real question is, one, is there legitimately a spirit in the house in question? Because if there isn't, there's some other problem that needs to be addressed, and that's not an uncommon thing. Often people who think they have demons in their house need to talk to a good psychiatrist. And needing to talk to a good psychiatrist and having a demon in your house, by the way, is not mutually exclusive. The second question I'm going to ask is, whatever is in that house, is it a problem for the person? If you have a spirit that at 12:15 at night walks down the hallway, down the stairs, opens the front door, walks out the front door, slams the front door behind it, and that's the only thing that ever happens in that house, I don't really care what it is. It's not a problem.
Sorry.
Go out of the house from 12 to 12:30. You don't even have to listen to that anymore.
They play Harry Belafonte's Banana Boat song.
If someone is being terrified, if someone is being physically assaulted, then there's something needs to be done to deal with the problem. I don't care if it's a demon, I don't care if it's a fairy, I don't care if it's elemental. There's a problem, what are we going to do about it? Theologically speaking, there is a bit of misunderstanding in the two terms, in my opinion. Spirits are non-physical entities, for lack of a better word. Ghosts, angels, fairies, elementals.
You didn't bring fairies into it, they're evil.
Thought forms, totems, and that's just listing the ones I've run into over the years. And there's a longer list of things out there that qualifies as spirits. Demons, in my opinion, are inhuman spirits, meaning specifically, as Dru said, there's a lot of debate on this. There are spirits that have never walked the world in physical form. And they have two other qualities. They are spirits that are extremely angry with God, and I don't just mean the Judeo-Christian God, I mean the divine in all of its manifestations, and they are spirits that are pissed off with humans. I personally believe, and it's a matter of theology, not a matter of anything I can remotely prove, that they are fallen angels, because that's part of my Judeo-Christian religion. I know of other theories about what they are. Since I've never actually sat down and had a conversation about God, about where do demons come from, I'm not willing to say I know the answer. I have an opinion.
Have you dealt with spirits, pissed at other spirits, and people just get caught in the crossfire?
That I've seen a lot.
Not necessarily about you or God.
Spirit?
I've never actually, I don't
Oh yeah.
interact with spirits in that way, the way that
We
you
do.
guys.
Yeah.
Like even just looking at the medieval record of like stories, that comes up all the time.
It's really when
sit in your house and spew it.
It's so much easier if you're going to pick a side. It's so much worse than the side is. It's the Babylon 5 thing. It's like both of you, just get the hell out of here. Let us do our thing.
Well, that's my most question, honestly, for you, Kevin. It was, alright, you go on the ghost hunt. If the father isn't there, I mean, that's why I always have an issue when you talk about the ghost hunters or something else like that. It's like, okay, why was it you come across something, it's ticked off, and it wants a piece of you? What do you really have there if you don't have anything to do to defend yourself to do anything about it?
Actually, what I would call it necessarily is, and what I would tell most people, and I'll be going over it this at length in the paranormal, the next panel is, I'm not a magician. I don't practice what I personally consider magic. I know magicians, and you may very well be one of them, that would disagree that what I do is, in fact, another form of magic. I deal with faith. I deal with the power of belief. I deal with the power of prayer, holy water, holy salt, and it works pretty darn well.
Prayer is magic.
Yeah.
Don't sell that short.
I personally would disagree with that interpretation. I'm not offended by that.
Art and I would probably love to sit down with you on this very topic for tomorrow.
I think you're interested to sit down and chat.
I would gladly chime in.
I think all four of us are going to have a really fascinating conversation.
Come back at about 2 in the morning.
I would love a couple of bottles of wine later.
I see it as different. I'm not necessarily saying better or worse, just different. I'm certainly not knocking other people's way of approaching things. It's just the way I personally approach it is from a religious perspective. Most demonologists that I work with approach it from a religious perspective, though not uniquely a Christian one. The reality is, I have things I call demons. You could go to Mullah, a Muslim priest, and he may call it a jinn. You may go to a Hindu that's going to call it a Rashaka.
Be so happy we don't have a voodoo here. That would just make things very complicated. You think I'm joking? That's the worst part.
He really isn't. But there are religions all over this world that have a tradition of the fact that there are malevolent spirits in this world. And personally, as I said at the beginning, I was trained by Lou Gentili. Lou Gentili was the last trained by Andrei Moyer. We have a standing, all the way going back to the Warrens, we have a standing tradition of, we don't really care we're not going here to try and convert people. We'll work within your belief system and find someone suited to the way you're seeing things. Now, I get asked from time to time, well, can a Christian priest deal with a jinn, since jinn aren't part of the Christian religion? In my experience, yes. It isn't, the names that spirits call themselves, in my opinion, aren't particularly relevant. It's the person who's performing the ritual. Ideally, if I go to a Catholic family, I'll go to a Catholic priest. If I go to a Wiccan family, I'm not bringing them a Catholic priest unless I don't have another option.
That's not a good.
It's better. It's always better to match the belief of the person that you're trying to help with the belief of the person who's going to do the
It makes
ritual.
sense, yeah.
Yes.
I can't remember exactly what Father Joe said on the subject of mixing with gods who historically have never gotten on well.
Keep in mind, Father Joe is a formally ordained, went to seminary priest. If you're a Buddhist, he'll help you go find a Buddhist who knows how to perform an exorcism. He's like, I'm going to try and get you to become a Christian.
My wife really loves Kali. Can we just leave that right there? just
Okay.
We're actually watching Jeopardy, and the answer was Kali, and my wife said, Kali! I have never heard anybody invoke that name with such happy
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, you might want to think that one through. She's sweet, but has a temper. I can't imagine why.
I would have actually loved to see her face if hearing her name invoked with such squeeing, like.
She stuck her tongue out. Kali.
Maybe do an impression.
What time is it?
About 7:05 after.
Okay, we can keep going for a little longer. We do need a little bit of time between the two.
And obviously, I don't want to speak for everybody else. If you have questions directly for any of us, it's not like we're going to look at you and go, I saw you in the back, go away. Feel free, I mean,
Ask Ask me about werewolves.
all seriousness, ask him about werewolves. It's a fascinating thing to say.
Art can talk to you about, Omnimancer. Obviously, that's. I mean, are you basically the head of the tradition?
Yeah.
Tradition. I can talk about Thelema. I can talk about.
I have several students that are in the audience.
Hi there.
He has several students who actually are staff for Crucible. But I can speak about the philosophy of Thelema, I can talk about ritual magic, I can explain the OTO, and you can laugh, I don't know.
Drew and I will be telling fairy tales tomorrow.
I'm gonna come to that one.
Yes.
So I missed the beginning of this panel, so I have no idea if what I'm about to ask is covered or not, but how do you guys feel in general about, because you mentioned somewhere in here some general like psychic powers, not necessarily actually like reading people's minds, but being like premonitions and things like, I don't know if empathy is really the right word, but just the ESP is definitely not the term I'm thinking of, but just having a kind of empathy was something I was thinking of, but it's just various like psychic sensitivity. No, not necessarily.
It kind of straddles the line between psychic and psychological. That's something fairly empathic.
There are a lot of people who actually will begin to explain to you that will say that ESP, psychic abilities, can sometimes cross with a misunderstanding of psychological abilities. Empathy is the easiest one, that people get very good at reading the nuances. I don't want to misrepresent the concepts of Asperger's, which is not picking necessarily up on certain social signals. There are other people who basically can sense breathing changing, and it's not anything that's unnatural per se.
That's why I was kind of specifying more things in the vein of like precognition.
Precognition.
The actual premonition.
Anything that is not currently explained by science is still magical, and even some science is magical. I write software, and I think how it gets through the chips is magical. But that's not to belittle it any.
I work with psychics. Certainly, the thing you'll find, especially in ghost hunting groups, is there's a debate about how important it is to have a psychic, usually specifically clairvoyant, which is someone who perceives the existence of spirits. In a group, there's some groups that swear by psychics. I, again, like the fact that I'm not really concerned, is it technically a demon or a fairy? I'm concerned with, is it a problem and do we need to do something about it? I'm a very pragmatic person when it comes to an investigation. I'm not very psychic. I'm good at reading emotions, which is mostly psychological with a bit more. My methods, and a lot of the ones I'll specifically be talking about during the class, are methods that are empirical. You don't need an ounce of psychic ability to do it. I think it helps to have a psychic with you, and I think psychic powers can certainly be useful, but it's not the be-all and end-all. Granted, the most effective investigative team I'm aware of would be Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed was a trained demonologist recognized, but the only lay demonologist ever recognized by the Roman Catholic Church, to my knowledge. Lorraine Warren was a light trance medium and clairvoyant who was tested at UCLA. Came in very handy, but she was also, for a number of reasons, a particularly powerful psychic. Psychic phenomena, I will say, exists. There are many people who think they're psychic that aren't.
And that's not the same.
I also say that you can actually train to pick up, and be psychic. It's not as, you're born with it, that's it. It's like anything else. Someone is better at math being born with it versus just training on it. So I won't debate that, some people are a little more natural than others. But I know from our perspective as being Omnimancers, the way that we have to develop magical senses. And sensing spirits and talk to them, or walking through little parts of ourselves, and that kind of stuff comes along with that. We actually have to set up spells to prevent a lot of the craziness that's out there from affecting us, or else when they hear noises, I don't hear noises.
And I mean, there are ways to cultivate these types of things, not just the empathy, but things like precognition, also having an open sense to people.
Divination?
Divination. Sorry, I do a lot of divination.
Well, that's my point. So,
That's right. Yeah. So, you can cultivate, you can have a natural, but, a lot of it, and we talked about this way back at the first Nutmeg, is how to get a sense for am I doing something, am I feeling something, and letting yourself find through that. Again, any of us, I mean, I'm seeing that the people are beginning to turn over at this point.
Yeah,
It might be better for some of us to take it.
I was going to say, let Drew respond, and then I want to just give everybody a
Generally,
chance for final
my idea on
thoughts.
that one, I don't know if you've noticed with my speaking, but I generally just like to stay completely non-committal as far as my own personal beliefs go. It's not the job of a historian to apply his own personal ideas. It's the job to state other ideas and make them coherent. However, you see psychics across nearly every culture. I can't think of any examples, counter-examples. And there's striking similarities between them. Whether you're looking at medieval Europe, the Navajo, or various shamans, witch doctors, everything, a lot of them show remarkable similarities throughout time and cultures.
Roman
So-
singers?
Yeah.
I mean, just let everybody do brief, since we're running low on time. Final thoughts. This time, I'm going to start instead of picking on Andrei. The central.
Aw, I'm getting used to it.
I'll pick on you next.
Thank you, love.
So what I do want to say is there's a lot of weird things out there. Bringing this panel together and continuing to do it is, in my opinion, interesting because there's a lot of different perspectives. I find it fascinating to listen to the gentleman next to me talk. There is granted, to put my own final plug on things, I'm a demonologist. If you have a problem in your house, if you know someone who has a problem with their house and you need something done about it, I'm available. I have business cards of a sort with me, finally. They're not actual business cards, but if anyone's doing the Concordia game, I have my own personal cards. And in point of fact, under the right conditions, if you have my card in play, you can automatically win the game.
I swap your hat.
Certainly.
Kevin, we were saying my own cards too. What's the thing in my head going, we're ready to
Oh, that was
leave you.
quite deliberate.
Yeah, he was. It was like, if something's going on, who are you going to call?
Yeah.
Kevin.
Well, on the subject, the card is also in handy because it has a link to some of my writing online. It's a whole bunch of articles I've written on a lot of paranormal topics, and it's completely free if you want to go read it, but I'll get paid a couple of bucks if you come read my stuff. So please feel free to.
Of course,
Andre,
you're
what do you want to finish things up with?
I give foot rubs, night.
Final thoughts. Everyone's going to get one, but it's your turn.
Everybody is going to basically need to find their own answers, their own solutions, their own aspirations. We've talked about a lot of very hard terms: demon, spirit, angel, good, evil, light, dark. And a great poet once said, "One man's heaven is another man's hell." You know, you may be two 70-year-old people looking at slides of Mount Shasta, and I guarantee there are people in this room who go, "Why?" And if you find yourself in a room doing that for all of eternity, some of you are in heaven, some of you are in hell.
I like that.
All right.
Drew?
Generally, I'd say read. If you're going to try anything, there are plenty of sources out there. I'd say more than half of them are bullshit. How do you know it's bullshit? Keep reading.
Trust me, even some authors conflict with themselves.
Oh, good Lord, yes.
If they are just kind of winging things out there that don't seem to make sense with you, there's probably a reason for it. Also, would you really try and operate a complex machine just by winging it?
Yeah.
There's giant gears, wires hanging down, and it's fine.
I really think he burned down his own house with magic.
Hey, it worked out in the end. You got a cool 16th out.
Yeah, well, that's the way you look at it. As far as I'm concerned, having someone actually be able to tell what your mistakes are, as much as a book is a good primer, I really can't stress enough finding someone who's reliable. Ask around. Just because someone says they know what they're doing doesn't mean they do. Ask around. See what his reputation is. Will they believe him, or is he full of shit? Plain and simple. Because in the end, a person's going to be able to tell you what you're doing wrong, a book isn't. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't read. I'm a big proponent of the books, do not get me wrong. But in the end, if you're going to do something dangerous, make sure you actually have a mentor that actually knows.
If you're gonna build a nuke, have someone who knows how to build the nuke with you.
It's like,
And don't scare.
oh no, I skipped your quarter. Oh well.
I don't want to self-sell because I would think that none of us would ever actually refer to ourselves as experts, except for Art. But the best thing to do is if you want to collect contact information for each of us, we aren't necessarily your trad, your path, but between the four of us and other people, we might be able to point you at somebody who can answer your question of, how do I invoke the face hugger from Alien? Your thing, not mine. Some of you want to teach to use Geiger as a focus, then call for blue. Not in public. Now there's Youngin. Here's the guy saying, don't do demons, and he's invoking Cthulhu.
Oh, it's so cute and squishy.
The baby plushy ones are.
Yes,
True.
I mean, I'll plug my convention. Convention is October 3rd. It's actually at another very close to Princeton hotel. I'm blanking. But it's right down the street.
Same one as last year?
Yeah.
Good.
What was the name of it again?
You can find it on the internet.
It's this one. I know it's on the Princeton. Oh, the Crown Plaza of Princeton.
There you go.
I haven't written it up yet, but I already have the contract.
All right.
Go to it, it's fun.
It is.
Please do.
Go to it.
It's basically a symposium. The whole point is that you have a lot of people there. They're all academics. They all know what they're doing.
Oh, wait. I didn't know that was a qualification.
We've been for 20 years, so that counts.
Oh, cool.
Besides, we had the guy who burned down his house.
I want to meet him.
Oh, he's a character. So,
I never burned down my house with demons. Come on, I'm disappointed.
So the whole point of the convention is to show as many different paths as possible. Hopefully you find something that's interesting, and then of course you learn more on your own time, and you actually talk to whoever's in the presentation. That's the whole idea, is to educate as much as possible and disperse the myths about a lot of things about magic that can sometimes, and don't get me wrong, magic can be very bad if you're not looking at what you're doing. Magic can purposely be made bad because people are that way. But in and of itself, it's something cool, more than less.
If you want to go poking spirits with a stick, I am looking for ghost hunters, and I'm teaching a class on it at 7:30.
I will say he's not literally saying poking with a stick because I don't think he won't have that. I have stories about people trying to do that one. I didn't end up well.
But thank you all for coming. Please feel free to stick around. There's something else going on that most of you have probably heard just before the class.
Show it off again. Show it off. Do it.
Yay.
Somebody's getting married.
See, now wouldn't it just be wonderful? It's like, will you? She looks up and says, I will.
Feel free to do that.
Stop getting that glorious. Contract.
But as long as you people want to keep coming, we will be continuing to do this panel. I think we're going to try and shoot for steampunk. Andrei,
Thank you for welcoming me to join me.
Formal invitation to join us next time.
I hope I haven't.
No, you've been very interesting. Yes, I would like
I have so many questions I want to ask you about, like that guy that eats the thieves.
What?
That guy that someone stole something from him.
Yeah, that's like I said. Go online, Google the word Goetia, and then go away and don't think about it again for a while. There's a rule in Judaism about the Kabbalah that before you should study the Kabbalah, this is from a Jewish point of view, get married, be 35, have a kid, then come back and study the Kabbalah. Now, I did it myself before then, but I understand why. The eagerness to go, I want to learn about the Goetia, is actually the warning sign. Not yet. Don't.
It sounds so interesting.
It does. And then you blow yourself up or you get your head eaten.
I cleaned up the mess that people who weren't ready when you started playing music?
I'm not local. I don't clean up people's messes here.
Look, I'm not planning on it. I just want to read all about it. Like I'm reading a Wikipedia.
You can find the information online.
There's also a belief that thinking too much about demons is a way to stumble on it.
Come on.
Thank you all. I must get.
Apparently not. Basically,
Well, keep in mind that there now may be a Slenderman because enough people believe in Slenderman.
You're saying a something awful threat that became a meme, that became an internet show, that became a video game, is now an actual thing that kids
It may be.
I mean, someone did get stabbed because there's
They were
crazy people.
sacrificing someone just like
Two little girls decided to sacrifice their friend because they wanted to make an offering and be recognized by Slenderman.
I'm not saying definite, from my understanding, but possibly.
Man, also my experience is because spirits can kind of shapeshift, if something gets enough PR, whether there was one or not, they go, well, I'm Slenderman, really, see, yeah, I look like it now. Really, I am.
people have done magic and invoked Cthulhu and reported results. Is it that Cthulhu actually exists? Is it that enough people believe in Cthulhu that they've created Cthulhu? Or did a spirit out there just go, oh, what the hell, I'll answer Cthulhu?
How many cosplayers we have at weekend fairs? Do you think spirits can cosplay something else?
I have answers.